Hello everyone, I'm reporting from my lounge kitchen area. Reason I'm doing that is I can just basically glance at the newspaper online and just give you a report, because it's actually quite good news. It's very good news for Australia in my opinion, and I think people who are suffering under lockdown, severe lockdowns in Victoria and New South Wales would appreciate any good news. Actually, I was looking at my videos and I noticed that some of the most negative comments were about one of the videos I did about the lockdowns. The other thing that's actually quite disappointing is that they had the recall election for Gavin Newsom, the Governor of California. And California's an absolute basket case in economic terms. It's really, people are paying through the nose with taxes and what have you, because it's just costing so much to service certain sectors of the economy, the bureaucracy such as the police force and what have you, and just general infrastructure. And it's a bureaucratic nightmare as well. You need basically licenses to do anything over there. And Gavin Newsom is basically a hypocrite too when it comes to lockdown situations. He'll basically flaunt the lockdown regulations, but expect the populace to abide. The same as with Nancy Pelosi going to the hairdresser without wearing a mask. It's the same hypocrisy, just pathetic. So it's quite disappointing that the challenger, who's black, which should be in line with a lot of the Democrat voters, basically got nowhere near the 50% required to say yes to the recall, and Larry Elder would have actually been the winner going on the polls if it had followed along those lines. But I think there was only about 32.5% the last time I saw that were in favour of getting rid of Newsom. It was about 2/3 to retain him, and it's just staggering. So as California goes down the gurgle and people leave the place in droves, just remember this, Californians, you brought this on yourself, so you've only got yourself to blame. So, but the other piece of bad news I forgot to mention, and it's very remiss of me, is the passing, the death of Norm MacDonald, one of the funniest comedians I've ever seen. You may not even know who he is in Australia. He doesn't have that high a profile. He was on Saturday Night Live probably a decade or more, probably 20 years ago actually, when it was still funny. And he had his own show called the Norm MacDonald. I think it's called the Norm MacDonald Show, or just Norm. It might have been just called Norm, but it was a fantastic sitcom. I think it only went for a couple of seasons, but I think it's one of the funniest sitcoms I've ever seen. In line with Father Ted, which I think is also one of the funniest sitcoms. So it's in the heady league as far as I'm concerned. Comedy is very subjective, so this is just my opinion. But he died at 61. He'd been battling cancer for over a decade, but didn't mention it to anybody. So he put on a bit of weight, funnily enough. So he wouldn't have thought he had cancer actually. He was getting quite chubby, so I guess people wouldn't have thought that. But it depends which cancer. I mean, it's a complex disease and can hit in many forms. And but I'm 5 years older than Norm, and he only made it to 61, so it's a bit of a tragedy. And he also was a guy who hated woke culture, so that's another reason to mourn his passing. So yes, like I said, commiserations on the passing of Norm MacDonald. But there is good news today, and the major news is going to affect Australia in a very positive way, in a fiscal sense, in that we were going to be pouring billions, multiple billions of dollars into a dud submarine project. It looked as though the Australian government were intransigent when it came to this, but today we find out that no, that it was a a diesel electric submarine, by the way, not even a nuclear one. So it was old technology that meant it'd have a very limited range of subs. And we, being an island nation, we need nuclear submarines to patrol our area. This doesn't mean we're going to have nuclear weapons on the subs, but it means that they'll be much more capable because they can roam a larger area. And with the situation with China becoming much more belligerent, especially towards Australia, this is a welcome event. So I'll read out what the headline is regarding this. Australia to build nuclear submarines as we form new alliance with the US and Britain to counter the rise of China in the Pacific. But did Joe Biden really call Scott Morrison that fella down under during an historic announcement? Well, that's an aside, but it's a classic Joe Biden moment. And even though the current regime in America is quite lamentable, this is going to be a long-term agreement between the UK, America and Australia, which is a very sensible move given that China is not our friend. I think we should also cement relations with India and Japan. Japan are part of the Quad, so that's good anyway. But I'll just read on if you can bear with me. I'm just being a blind bus, I'll just have to get close to the print. Australia will build nuclear submarines in historic new alliance with the US-UK. Comes after a series of late-night secret meetings between officials in Canberra. Australia will form part of a three-way security pact with the UK and America. It is hoped the partnership will counter the rise of an increasingly hostile China. And that's patently obvious. They are becoming much more of a threat under the Xi Jinping's regime. Now, I don't even know if Xi Jinping will last the distance because he's basically pushing China back into a Maoist type of culture, and that's going to affect them very badly economically. So I think we're talking about not only America in decline, I think China is as well. So interesting times, as they say. Australia will build a nuclear-powered submarine fleet in a major new alliance with the US and Britain to counter the worrying rise of China in the Pacific. Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Thursday morning unveiled Australia's role in the landmark tripartite security group, known by the acronym AUKUS, I suppose, AUKUS, to switch to nuclear-powered submarines with help from its two biggest allies. Mr Morrison was joined virtually for the historic press conference by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and US President Joe Biden, who at one point during the announcement appeared to forget the Australian leader's name. Well, you knew at least it definitely was Joe Biden and not an imposter if that's the case. Thank you, Boris. I want to thank that fella down under. Thank you very much, pal, Mr Biden said. Oh, what a crack up. It's just a pity the guy's got his finger on the nuclear button. The announcement means Australia will walk away from its controversial deal to spend up to $90 billion buying French diesel-powered submarines. To be fair to the French, they actually built them as nuclear submarines, but we wanted to have them modified to diesel-electric. So the French aren't happy about this, which is not surprising. This is the first time Australia has embraced nuclear power after decades of debate, and the first time the US and UK have shared their nuclear submarine technology with another nation. So that is a big deal, and it is important for us to have the best technology. I'm not sure where the French technology stands there, because they've got plenty of nuclear power stations and they do have nuclear missiles. So I'm not sure whether that's a bad thing. I can understand the French being upset about that because, they could have provided nuclear submarines as well. But this is a more practical move because we are in the Pacific, and the America and to some degree the UK can provide more of a tangible backup than the French can in this part of the world, I would have thought. However, Mr Morrison stressed Australia is not going to acquire nuclear weapons or use nuclear power to help fuel the national power grid. Australia has at least 40% of the world's uranium supplies, and the new submarine deal could pave the way for the country to to embrace nuclear power for drastically reduced carbon emissions. That is still if they can finally crack fusion. There have been some major improvements in the fusion technology of recent times. Even though they say it's always going to be 30 years before we'll have fusion power, I think that's being overly pessimistic. I think we might get it, but it'd still be at least a decade or two, I would think. The move towards a nuclear Australia has been described as China's worst nightmare in a strategic bid to counter its influence in the region, especially in the South China Sea. I would say that the Japanese are also a bit of a nightmare for the Chinese as well. They've certainly showed that they're not going to put up with this crap anymore. And they may eventually go nuclear armed just to counter the threat from China. And that's something that China will really regret. Our world is becoming more complex, especially here in our region, Indo-Pacific. This affects us all. The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact on our futures, Mr. Morrison said. To meet these challenges, to help deliver the security and stability our region's needs, we must now take our partnership to a new level. So the AUKUS is born, a partnership where our technology, our scientists, our industry, our defence forces are all working together to deliver a safer and more secure region that ultimately benefits all. Mr. Morrison said that the submarines would be developed over the next 18 months and built in Adelaide in a cooperation with the US and the UK. Officials have said the vessels will be quieter and more capable than Australia's existing fleet and will deter China's ambitions in the Far East. Neither the Australian leader or his UK and US counterparts made no direct mention of the Chinese government in Thursday's announcement. He added the deal did not violate Australia's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation treaties. Mr. Johnson described the project as one of the most complex and technically demanding in the world, lasting for decades and requiring the most advanced technologies, he said. The announcement came just days before Mr. Morrison travels to the US, to Washington DC, for the first in-person summit of the 4 Quad nations, Australia, US, Japan and India. And I think that's the one that will concern China the most, is that they've basically created this Quad alliance because of the way they've treated us and other nations in the region. So, brilliant diplomacy from Xi Jinping. Australia's new nuclear submarine fleet won't be welcome in New Zealand. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has warned. Well, I think Jacinda's pretty well aligning herself with Beijing the way things are going, and I think ANZUS might be in trouble, which will be a shame, but she's a dangerous woman herself. She's crazy, in my opinion. The new submarines are the centrepiece of a new security deal known as AUKUS, agreed to by Australia, the United States, the United Kingdom, and announced on Thursday morning. New Zealand has been left out of the alliance despite being a member of the Five Eyes intelligence sharing network along with AUKUS members in Canada. Well, I don't know if I'm too happy sharing any intelligence with the New Zealand government in their current form, to be quite frank. The Kiwi leader said the formation of AUKUS is no ways changes our security and intelligence ties with these 3 countries. Yeah, because they want a free ride. They're not going to prepare to actually pay for their own defence. So they basically expect other people to do the heavy lifting for them. I'm not impressed. We welcome the increased engagement of the UK and US in the region and reiterate our collective objective needs to be the delivery of peace and stability and the preservation of international rules-based system, she said. Blah, 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 Jacinda. Ms. Ardern was briefed on the alliance by Scott Morrison on Wednesday night. Oh, God, what a lightweight. Look, I don't think there's any... They're going on about New Zealand again. I think we could avoid that. New Zealand is becoming less relevant by the day, the way they're acting. So that's basically good news all round. The other good news is that regarding travel, apparently they're finally the Australian government's going to treat us like adults again and allow us to travel overseas as of the 18th of December. So the restriction for everybody, Australians travel without written permission from the government, it will be scrapped, and again you'll be able to travel overseas to countries that are open up, which is only limited with limited number of countries, and it won't do me any good because I want to go to Vietnam and there's no sign of that opening up at the moment. Vietnam, Thailand and even Malaysia, they're all having major problems with COVID, and it's only going to be countries like Singapore, Japan, the US, which surprised me a bit. I was surprised to hear that one. But yeah, there'll be certain countries that you can go to, but it won't be Vietnam in the short term. I may have to still wait until about April or May next year, which is a pain in the ass. But I guess I'll just keep working on the house. I've got plenty to do here, so the weather's great. And boy, if I had to pick anywhere in the world, I think where I've picked is probably one of the best places to live. So I can't complain about that. But it is good to see that at least that travel ban has been lifted, and that you will be able to book flights overseas. I think it's from the 18th or the 19th of December, but it's definitely on the cards now. As long you've still got to have the jab, the double jab. So of course that's a fly in the ointment for people who don't want to do that, and that's their right, in my opinion. So I guess it is part of this the two-tiered society that's being created, and I don't think that's a good thing. But that is going to be in effect by the looks of things. So in my case, it won't make any difference anyway. The one place I want to go to, I'm going to have to wait for them to open the borders, and it's going to be some time before that occurs. But it will be nice that some Australians will at least be able to go overseas finally. So that is very good news, and so I'm glad this hasn't all been negative, this report. Anyway, that's today's video, and I've also planted one of my fruit trees in the front, so I feel good about that. And there's a lot more work ahead of me. I've got plenty of earth to work with, and I've worked out where I'm going to put the other 6 plants. And I'm going to go back to that to Branch's nursery fairly soon to pick up even more plants. Well, to get them delivered anyway. That's the beauty of it, free delivery. It's funny when it turned up in a horse float though. That cracked me up. That's a bit quirky, using a horse float for delivering plants. Oh well, yeah, it's funny here in the north. Anyway, that's basically it for today. As usual, please give me thumbs up or thumbs down. Feel free to comment on this video, and I hope you consider subscribing to this channel. I really appreciate that support. It is creeping up, actually. It's a very slow haul, but at least it's going in the right direction. So one of these days I might hit the 700 subscribers. I don't think I'll live long enough before I reach 1,000. I think that's beyond approach for me, but it is good to at least not losing people hand over fist, and they've got a few people hanging in there. So thank you for that. Thank you for the loyalty. And it's a windy but lovely sunny day here today, and I think it's time I go down to the beach because I haven't been there for probably 10 days or so, and it's typical. I move near the beach and I don't go and wander down there. It's a nice walk, it only takes 10 minutes, so that's my to-do list today. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch up with you again soon.